All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We're back here at the Vault, Derick Leg podcast. We want to let you guys know that this episode is sponsored by Blueform Media. Blueform Media is basically what you're looking at right here. What they provide is a studio that you can come in, you can rent the time to do an audio, all the way to what we do is a full production audio, video editing. Mallory with Blueform runs our social media and just full production. So make sure you follow her on Instagram. And if you've ever been interested in something like this, maybe message her and get in here. If you know me and you're intimidated by Mallory, then hit me up and I'll bring you over and we can show you. So Blueform Media sponsors this. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Apple Podcast, make sure you subscribe, give us a thumbs up, a review. All that stuff helps us out. So today I've got one of my really, really good buddies. We're partnered in the Safe Store. This is Jake Erickson.
That's it.
So welcome, Jake. Thanks for coming, man.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you giving me a opportunity to do this.
For sure. So I think we're going to get down a couple rabbit holes today, as we definitely do.
Me and Derick have a really good way of doing that. We do that almost on the daily. So,
so our involvement is Jake is one of the owners of Dixie Gun and Fish, and when I started doing holsters, when he bought into Dixie Gun and Fish, or when you became one of the partners.
Yeah. So, I guess I wasn't the partner then. It was when I was just managing. I kind of took over managing it.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's
that timetable
where we met.
And then I kind of pitched him on holsters with Weapon X holsters, and we got him in there, and our relationships just kind of skyrocketed, really. And so now with the Safe Store, we're partnered into the Safe Store, and he helps with a lot of our inventory and moves and really anything.
Delivery, any of that.
Yeah, if I need to call him for a question, he's there. So.
Sometimes not with the answer.
I always have questions, though.
That's always good.
Anyway, man, what's going on? What's new?
Oh, man, another day in paradise. That's what I always say, right?
Good.
So another good day.
Loving the gun store.
Loving the gun store. There's always the gun store. You get people that they talk a lot about, man, my job is kind of repetitive. Well, there's a lot of stuff that's repetitive in there, but the day is you interact with so many people, so many different walks of life that it definitely keeps you interested some days in what you're going to run into, because you can interact with the guy he's really too young to buy a gun. Oh man, I'm just coming in here to kill time. I want to see what you got. All the way to the guy that's like, he's been at Dixie Gun and Fish all 26 years that it's been around. He's here to kick the tires, but you get all walks of life, and that's kind of the fun part. I don't get to interact with everybody on the daily. Sure. Sometimes I'm the guy in the back I'm the pencil pusher.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that nobody wants to really be, but I have a good time, especially when I get out on the sales floor and interact with people, or I feel like sometimes I'm the problem solver.
Yeah, you're the fireman. You're putting out fires.
Definitely get to be a good fireman.
Well, let me ask you this.
Okay.
I wonder what the story is, and I don't think we've ever gone over it. How did you going into Dixie Gun and Fish come about? I know the Seg Millers, I know Tyne, Tom, those guys, and then Locker Room 2.
Yep.
So I want to mention Locker Room 2.
Yep. So how that all kind of came about was, what was funny is Tyne and me, we didn't go to school together, we didn't do anything, but everybody, if you're in St. George, Utah, the Locker Room, right?
Sure.
So Tom and Tyne, double T, right?
Yeah.
That's
TNT, man.
Yeah, TNT. They're awesome. Just good family. So what had happened is I've always been involved in sports, like the athletic. I coach a lot, do a lot of things that way. Those guys were just awesome. So I used to have a job that I had. I could kill time in between, when I'm seeing customers or doing things. So I'd go in and I got to be really good friends with Tyne. He would do all our uniforms, just across the board. If it was football, baseball, basketball, he had me covered. So we kind of started there, but a lot of it is you always have people that are kind of like mutual friends, cross paths, well, so he went to Pineview, I went to Snow Canyon. So he would always kind of jab me at like, oh man, we do this, but like we always won him in football at that time, right?
Yeah.
So so we'd always kind of go down that rabbit hole of like this or that. But so back when I was still working for this other company, Cisco Foods, I was working there, and Tyne actually hit me up one day. He's like, hey man, why don't you come run Dixie Gun and Fish? And I'm like,
just out of the blue.
Dixie Gun and Fish. I'm like, well, what's up with Dixie Gun and Fish? He's like, well, did you know, my dad's owned that for all the years. I'm like, Tom's owned it? He's like, yeah. The old store manager that everybody knew, Dick. He's like, yeah, Dick just runs it.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, Dick's going to retire. Why don't you come in and take it over, man? That's going to be more along like what you like to do, blah, blah, blah.
You like food too.
Yeah, too much. And that was the thing, is I really liked my job and I made really good money at it. And so I was like, man, I don't know. Like, he's like, well, tell me what you make, whatever, we'll see what we can do. And so it was like, at the time, I showed him and he's like, yeah, man, I don't know if we could do that. And I was like, well, I don't really want to move out of my comfort zone of like what I'm doing. Like, hey, that is kind of a cool job, would be awesome, to be in there running things. It just, at the time, stars didn't align. So fast forward, they kind of get a manager, didn't work out. They get kind of in a bind. They got to oust him. They call me up.
So they reach out.
Out to me. And now I've moved on from there. I'm doing my own thing. And they say, hey, why don't you come in? Why don't you run Dixie Gun and Fish? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Yeah, we can sit down and chat. So I kind of go in there and I'm like, oh, and it's like, because I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm growing my own thing.
Right.
If I come in here, this is really going to throw a wrench into what I'm doing.
Your pull boy company.
Yeah. And so I'm like, dude, I've got something really good going here, but I understand. But I was like, okay, hey, and they're like, hey, look, we know you'd be awesome. Just come in. You can still have full flexibility. If you got to leave, you got to do this. I'm like, that's kind of hard to like say no to. I'm like, okay.
You do whatever you want and we'll pay you.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. So I was like, man, okay, that's cool. Toot my horn a little bit. I'll go over there. So I get in there and we start doing things, and that's how I kind of came into Dixie Gun and Fish. Well, I'd been running it not even quite a year.
Okay.
And Tom had kind of been thinking about like, hey, maybe I'll retire, take a step back. Tyne wanted to step in and start doing some things. And so he just hit me up one day and was like, hey, man, do you want to partner up? We'll just do both these. Locker room, you still come over here, you run that. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have your own skin in the game, right? So
yeah, a little more accountability.
Exactly. So fast forward, we jump into that. Tom kind of retires. We take it over. And so when I took it over, when I was just running it even, it was not healthy as far as like financial wise. It wasn't the best. But we were able, I think sometimes there's transitions in business that guys can take different things. So I kind of say going from the old school way to kind of the new school way that everything is now, we kind of had to take that leap. So we moved locations, which you remember. I mean, we're the hometown gun store, right? Like everybody knows. I mean, everybody in this town's pretty much bought a gun from there.
If you're aware of guns in southern Utah, not even St. George, southern Utah,
yes,
you're aware of Dixie Gun and Fish.
Yeah, I mean, it's the oldest store, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we were looking at it, it's like, man, awesome. It was ran awesome for a lot of years. The people that were involved, it just has such a great name. It was like, man, this is awesome. Like, step in, but there's always all that work that has to go, and then you want to put your mark on your business and, what you want to do. So we move it up. Like I said, we went from the basement, moved upstairs
to where we're at. Basement.
Yeah, the back basement where, the locals knew where it was, but like everybody else, like every day you'd get a phone call. It's like, hey, I'm on this. I don't even know where you guys are at.
Yeah, I'm at the end of Tabernacle.
Yeah,
where
it's
are
like,
you?
Come downstairs. And they're like, downstairs? What do you mean? It's like, well, you drive down this hill. And people are like, okay, so it was kind of, so once we moved up and everything, it's been just phenomenal. Like the growth, everything is just exactly what you would want in a business. It did that,
Good.
and then you throw kind of what happened last year, the political environment as well as COVID. It just went bananas,
Yeah, it was bonkers over there.
Yeah, beyond your wildest dreams of almost too much.
Yeah. I mean, you'd go in there, it would literally it'd be packed.
Yeah.
You'd be at the gun counter and there's 2 or 3 people waiting.
Yeah. I mean, Black Friday every day. I mean, there literally would be like a line out the door. There were some
ammo,
days.
Hard time getting guns.
Yeah, everything was like, no, we don't have that. We can't get that.
It's
Why
on
not?
order
Yeah, and then it's
4 months.
Yeah, or longer.
Yeah.
Everybody wants, and the why. It's like, why?
You don't have Glock 19s?
No,
Yeah.
man. Not even Gen 3s? No, not even Gen 3s, I'm sorry. How long? Can you order them? Like, no, not really.
So what did you guys have to do to adapt through that? Because I'm sure you had to learn some lessons through it and maybe up staff a little bit, but at the same time, the inventory is having a hard time coming in. I mean, we've been that with the safe store.
Absolutely. And we're still going through that right now. I mean, on there, it's definitely a lot of adapting and trying to figure out other avenues. So you always have distributors. So you buy, I call them jobbers, like they're guys that'll just, you call them up, they have some, you buy some of that stuff. Well, you do that all online. Like, you didn't have to talk to a guy. They'd call you up with allocations is what they call it in our business. Like, hey, we have this gun, this gun, this gun today. Do you want any of them? Well, it went from no allocations and no inventory. So you're looking at it and it's like, so it's like, then you're ordering direct, which you like to do from the manufacturers. You're ordering direct. And we're doing that already, but not on that scale.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, how big's my shop? 2,500 square feet, maybe, give or take, right in there. Where it's like you go in the back room and you're looking and there's no inventory.
Right.
Like you don't have gun cases, you don't have gun holsters. I mean, you were getting plastered, on all the other businesses, and you're like, no, I promise you, I'm making you some gun holsters.
Yeah.
Like, man, when? It's like I'm making them as fast as like I've got these guys. They just ordered 5 of everything, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah. Well,
like,
we went through when that happened. We went through setting up the new safe store, and so I was a month back doing that.
Yeah.
And then it was like Rowdy's ordered, Dixie Gun and Fish ordered, a couple of the pawn shops wanted stuff, and then all of my custom things, and I was doing all of it.
And online stuff for you as well.
Online, yeah. I mean, like when we set that up, I think I got 300 holsters behind.
Holy cow!
And so,
yeah, it was something fierce. I knew that it was like this is just a different. Like when I'd explain to people, I'm like, this is just a different animal right now. Like you don't go from doing like $1 million to $2 million overnight. Well, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Like you literally did that. It was that kind of leap. Every day your sales is like what you would do on Black Friday.
Yeah.
And it's every single day. I mean, where we had to adapt is when COVID first hit. So in March, I remember the NBA, they kind of were like, oh, hey, they shut down the league, everything. And I'm like, so I call up my assistant manager. I'm like, hey, man, I don't know if you see, because he's not like a sports dude. And I'm like, man, this could be bad, like real bad.
And that was the first domino.
Yeah, it really was. And so I'm like, dude, let's go over to the store. Let's just look at like inventories from our distributors and let's just see, like, let's get a feel, because I'm like, I can't be the only guy. Granted, we're kind of more on the West Coast, right? So those East Coast guys, it might be too late, but you can order 24/7 on those. They just process the orders in the morning, right? So we get on there and I'm like, man, I'm way overthinking this. There is literally thousands and thousands of cases of ammo. And I know whenever like something happens, it's ammo sales. Like it's just like a firecracker. You're like, holy cow, like it just happens. Or like a shooting or any kind of things like that, anything where the government starts pushing back on the people and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to go buy my AR-15.
Got to protect myself.
That's right. So they start doing that, and so you'll see inventory depletion and it fluctuates. Well, this literally, like, so I'm like, man, there's so many cases. Let's just throw a few on, but get them from everywhere. So, like, we're order here. So we have like 4 or 5 orders with distributors. The next day, literally by noon, so we open at 10, by noon, 2 hours, and our doors were like, it was like a line out the door that morning.
I remember.
It was insane.
Yeah, like I remember you calling me.
And you know, I was running this store with me and 3 other guys. Like, that's about how we rolled. And like, I probably had 5 guys on staff. Like, so there was 3 guys on plus me, but those 5 kind of rotate, and I had a couple full time. This thing hits, and it's like, wow. I mean, just insane. Like, I'm literally at the register just ringing up, and it's like a line all the way to the back of the store, and I'm calling buddies. Like, I'm like, hey, man, I need you to just come over here to make sure people don't like rob me blind. Yeah. Like, I have ammo out. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Your Walmart Black Friday going on.
Yeah, and it's stupid. I mean, just dumb. So I'm like, geez, this is crazy. So I hop back online. Anything that was 223 9mm sold out.
Gone.
Like, it doesn't exist unless it's like either a super, super high-end ammo or like a steel case ammo that not a lot of guys will want to shoot. Depleted. I mean, every manufacturer's gone. And I'm like, holy cow. Like, I mean, okay, glad I got a couple cases. But we were like limiting. We were the first guys in town that were limiting. I had people that would come in from, they go to all the gun shops every day. And the funny thing is, that first day that COVID hit, Sportsman's had this huge sale. So I have customers coming over and they're like, dude, you got to check this out on this phone. And they have like guys with shopping carts. Like, he's pushing one and it's clear full, like, you know, like cases of ammo, and then he's pulling one.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, it's this bad? He's like, yeah, but he's like, they're just bringing out pallets and setting them on the ground. I'm like, and there's no limit? They're like, no. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. I'm limiting on things. And it just went just from there till today. It's still like there's no ammo. Yeah. It's just a complete shortage.
I mean, even reloading, I mean, anything.
They don't exist, and the cost is just to the moon now. I mean, I bought 9mm at a price that I would, when this started, I was, you know, because you see the guys that are like, they're trying to make $1 million on the problem, right? So like, they're buying it, reselling it, whatever they can do. And there was a few guys that were doing that, and you just see these prices, but it's just pushed the market so far up. But I mean, I literally bought at a local distributor that makes quite a bit, but they do a little bit higher end ammo. You actually came with me with your trailer, because you know, you got that sweet trailer to pick it up, and it was like, they call you up and they're like, hey, I got 100,000 rounds of 9mm. You know, and like the whole time I'm like, dude, I would mortgage my house. I would do this to like, give me a truckload. Like, because we'd have people that come in, I'll buy a pallet. It's like, dude, I got pallets on order. Yeah. Well, I'll just buy a pallet. It's like, you don't understand when this stuff comes in. I might have 6 cases on mine that are from pallets of order. Right. And they're like, what? It's like, no way. It's like, no way. Like,
that's how it works.
This is how it works. Like, everybody's getting a little, but it's a trickle, you know. And then you throw in the government regulations or like COVID regulations of like, oh, this guy's sick. So like, you could have somebody that's running all the ammo presses. He gets COVID, right? Or tests positive for COVID. Oh, now you're shut down for 10 to 14 days. Then they go back to work. Production's rolling. Boom, another guy gets it. So it's like you're doing these production issues that the supply is just so compounded with how many first-time gun buyers were last year's the most of all time.
And that was the big, I mean, I think that was the biggest thing, because I saw it go from, you know, the gun, ammo and guns, and then it went holsters, and then it went safes, right? Yeah. Like, we watched it, you know, this month it was this, and this month it was this, and it walked right through that.
Yeah, and the whole time we're kind of like, oh, yeah. And I remember I was like, man, we're not selling that many safes, you know, and this was before we started doing the safe store.
So we did that July, August. I think August is when we kind of opened.
So you signed a lease over there in
July 1. And then we went to June, July, August. We were kind of tentatively open the end of August, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Because it took us a little bit to, one, get inventory.
Yeah.
And then, two, we had to prep a lot of stuff. Like you and
Troy
came in and painted that nasty red wall.
The blood wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Turned out good, though.
Cut a big door out because it was just a single door. So we had some prep with that. But anyway,
yeah, I mean, it was just, but it just like, you know, we have a really good rep that reps our Champion and Superior safes. And the funny thing is, because he's been in the business so long, he's lived through enough of like the political things or different things that happen. Because I go to him on a lot of stuff because he just knows like the whole market, because all that kind of ties in together. Mm-hmm. And he'll be like, "No, man, you're going to go on a huge run of safes." And I'm like, yeah, like how huge? He's like, "No, like it always follows this." Like, yeah. And then you start throwing in like stimulus, right? So there's this stimulus money, all these things. And so guys, they come in and they start, you know, they have these like black Visa cards or whatever. You're like, "What is that?" "Oh, that's our stimulus." It's like, "Oh, that's what that looks like."
One of those and two of those.
Yeah. Like they're like, "I don't know how much money's on this," you know? And so it's like, they just charge till they don't have this. "Oh, I want this Glock 19X or whatever it is." Or, "Hey, I just got this," when they started doing I think it was the second stimulus, and a lot of it was based on how many kids you have. Or so some of these guys were getting thousands of dollars, and these people would come in and, you know, they'd buy a safe.
Right, because you're looking at a $500 handgun or a $2,000-$3,000 safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's the guy that, you know, he set aside $500, but now he comes in and he talks to you and he's like, "Oh man, hey, I can actually upgrade it to something really nice," you know. And was kind of, I think, kind of fed us and you as well.
For sure.
Was a lot of that. People just had a lot of money through this because stimulus, which that's what it was for, right? Is to come in,
stimulate the economy.
Yep, stimulate the economy. And so it was, you know, but it on the flip side, you know, my other store, when you're in the sports world, and that's like, it was like taboo. Like you don't, like we were heading into the biggest season of it, which is Little League baseball. They just own the market on that. And so you go into that, well, the 3 Little Leagues that are here, they all put in their orders, but two of them didn't play. And so, okay, yeah, they bought the stuff, but now next year they're not going to purchase. So you were okay, but like this year, now it's like, okay, well, how do I find X amount of thousands of dollars to compensate from the business that you lost? Mm-hmm. And so it was, you know, you have a business that's legit like busting at the seams, like you don't know what to do. I mean, You're in this predicament that, like, you know, my parents, you know, they always had successful businesses. And so it was like, I'm calling my parents going like, "Man, I don't even know what to do, like tax wise. I don't know how to do this or this," because you're just like, man, this is just this endless revenue that's coming in. You don't know what to do with it. Right. And so you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, I've always had businesses. I've worked for myself. I know these, but not on this scale.
Right.
Because of the way that was impacted by all the political, you know, when you're going through, you know, you got really the biggest election probably that we've ever lived through.
For sure.
You know, so you have all these people that it just was like the balloon effect is all I can say, you know. And so it was hard to watch like one business that's like really struggling. We let go both of our employees we've just got Tyne over at the store, and he's there like, you know, 4 days a week, working like 4 hours a day.
Yeah, I know you cut hours.
Yeah, because he's just like, what should I do?
No one's coming in to buy baseball bats and basketballs and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd get a few. The funny thing is like, I almost thought, right, COVID has, I think there's a lot of things that you can learn on both sides of the fence. Like you have, like just like the business, like there's one business that really struggles, one that doesn't. Well, I think like a lot of those people, especially because now, you know, you have all the kids home, right? You got parents, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's the next thing. And then we're all living on information we're getting, right? And it's like I tell my guys at work, it's really easy to seek out information that you agree with or that you're on that side. If you're more right-leaning, more left-leaning, whatever, you're going to go find information that validates what you say or what you think. Right? Because you never want to be wrong. I don't want to be the guy that's wrong, And so it's like, oh, yeah, hey, that guy definitely knows what he's talking about. So we're all kind of on the China virus that none of us know jack squat on,
right?
Because I'm sitting there going, like, at first I'm like, oh, this is weird. And then I'd like read something way down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, okay, this is bad.
Well, in the beginning, I was kind of questioning most things in my life I question first, right? And so I was questioning a lot of it. And then you start seeing like Andy Frisella always says, like, there was people in China just falling over dead. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, okay, we should probably start preparing for this.
But like when he's saying stuff like that, it's like, is that true?
Right.
Well, like I wasn't seeing this body. Yeah. Like you're seeing guys in hazmat suits, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, okay. But then, so I was on the flip side. So I have a really good friend that he works in there just for really something to do. He's pretty well off. He does some good stuff while he comes in there. Well, one of his best friends that he shoots with is a doctor. He owns 30 clinics.
Wow.
Across basically from the central to the west. And he was in the Denver location. And so I'm like, dude, you got to call him and find out, like, what's he seeing, right? Like, this guy's hands-on, like.
Denver's main hub.
Yeah, and Denver is like, it was a hot spot for a minute, right? And so he like calls him up and he's like, dude, I had a guy that was like 21. He's on a ventilator, all this stuff. And I'm like, and he's like, this is something like you don't want to get it, is what he's saying. So I'm like, man, I put a lot of weight in what this guy says. He's a doctor. He has all this, he's running these clinics.
Front line.
Yeah. And so I'm like, man. So at first I'm kind of like, oh, but he's basically telling me of like one or two people. And it's freaking me out, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's so fresh. Because there it was like, at first you're seeing like this needle, like deaths, you got Trump on TV, they're having press conferences and
shutting down everything,
no
travel.
Yeah, they're telling you all this stuff, so you're like, oh, man, what am I believing, And then of course in like New York and some of these places, they're playing it up, And so I'm kind of like, and I think all of us were a little bit at first, and one of my best friends, I talk to him literally like every morning. And so we're talking to this and he's like,
your wife, right?
Yeah. She is my best friend. I love you, honey.
You're welcome, Steph.
Yeah. But me and him, we've just been buddies forever. And so he's like sitting there and the whole time, like even before all this, you almost think like, I never think he's crazy because he's so intelligent. And he's just like, he's predicting all this stuff that's happening. And I'm kind of like, nah.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no way. The government's not going to set us up like this. This guy's not, nobody's going to set us up. And he's like legit like calling this stuff. And like now we scale back like today and it's like, dude, he wasn't wrong, man. Like he's like predicting all this stuff of what, and he's like totally confident on like what he's saying. Like, I mean, he never wavered at all. It was like, no, you're going to see this. This is going to happen. And it's a lot of politics, man.
For sure.
Yeah. Like they're doing this because there's a lot of stuff going on that it's like, right, you see this here, what's this hand doing over here, right? And so he's literally like telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, man, you kind of sounded crazy.
Okay, conspiracy
right?
guy.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm like, dude, he's never been a conspiracy guy. Like, this is crazy to me. And he's just like telling me every day, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to think. But you just see all this stuff, and it kind of just, the way that it's lining up in the political environment was so crazy with Trump, Biden, and then you're seeing all this stuff, the debates, everything, and you're just like, there's no way. I mean, I've never seen a president that's had that kind of support. I mean, even here, St. George, Utah, right? I mean, how many
support from the people?
Yeah, people that supposedly they represent, right? Or your state representatives. And it was like, you have Trump in there and everybody's just like, I mean, we're having like these crazy rallies that go from St. George to Hurricane, and it's like a steady stream of traffic. And I'm like, then you see stuff like in Texas, it's like 30 miles long. Arizona, you're like, dude, this guy's got it in the bag,
Yeah.
and we're going to get, the virus whooped. That's what I'm thinking is we've got all this. And I'm like, it's going to magically go away, right? And then it was like, no, it's like getting worse. And then the election goes the way that they tell us it went.
Right.
Whether or not that's I still don't think it's the truth. But you have all this that goes in there, and it's never, just our whole economy has never recovered.
Right.
I mean, flat out. I mean, today we got another price increase on like our safes, and it's like we're buying these safes at what we retail them at.
Right. In a year.
Yeah, in a year. I mean, literally, hundreds of dollars. And luckily for us, we have such a good rep. We have such a good relationship. We do as well as we do with the business that we're one of the largest dealers now between the two locations that they're like, man, make sure Jake and Derick have all that they need.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, we're pretty solid that way where they just literally they stock us up.
So the rep, Troy, I've actually talked to him and he wants to come on. So we're going to have him on here when he's in town next.
Dude, I love it.
But when people come into the store, our store, I guess yours is the same.
Yeah.
But they come into ours and we have an entire side of the store that's all Champion.
Oh, yeah.
And then Superior, which is Champion, essentially. It's your Acura Honda.
Yeah.
We've got maybe 8 or 9 of those. And then we have 4 Fort Knox. And Browning is 6 months out. I just talked to them today, and they're telling me at the end of the month. This is the 3rd straight month they've told me the end of the month, right?
End of the month comes up fast.
Yeah. But what you're getting at to prove that point is Troy is pushing all of that stuff to us to make sure that we stay on top and to make sure he knows that we're pushing him. I mean, every time I talk to him, he's, hey, how's this going? And, hey, man, we sold 7 safes last week, or 8, 9, 10 safes last week. I mean, we had 4 that went out one day.
Yeah.
And he was just like, man, now I got to get you some more. So I think he's running around chasing his tail trying to figure out how to push us more safes down.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just crazy because of the way that is. Obviously, if everybody had a Troy that is that good of a rep, we'd all be really successful in business. True. And, Troy's one of those guys, too. I love that guy. He's like true blue. Like, even if I got out of this business, he's still going to call me weekly because he's that kind of guy. Yeah. I've never met people that are as genuine as Troy's probably one of the most genuine people I've ever met. And he just really, like, what you didn't know him at all.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, this guy, like, he's going to tell you stuff. You listen to what he tells you because he's going to make you successful because he genuinely cares if Derick or Jake is successful at the end of the day.
In anything.
Everything. That's what I'm saying. Like, it didn't matter if my boy, he would text me every week that my boy played high school football.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So
every week.
I had talked to him on the phone a few times with you. And then I think we were going to Mesquite on a delivery.
Yep.
And he had called just randomly.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
Jake, how's everything going? And, hey, it's going good. Well, how'd the game go last night?
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And he's sitting there asking you about how Jaden played.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, this is the guy I got to get behind.
Yeah. He's just an amazing person. And, like, the things that he's done in his life is just, guy's world class. He's going to be successful in whatever he does because he's that kind of guy. But he's successful really in, like, business. Like, I've learned a lot from him. Just in business of things that he has, he taught me, like, relationships, like, are very, very important in how you treat people, how you treat employees. He was just funny. Like, the first time my wife ever met him, so we had a grand reopening when we moved the store, and of course he's like the first guy's like, dude, you give me the date, I'm there.
Yeah.
Whatever you need, whatever we got to do, right? He comes down, my wife meets him. My wife's like, literally, she's like, I'm like tearing up. She's like, how good do you know this Troy guy? I'm like, I know him as well as I can.
Yeah.
But she's like, dude, he said the nicest things about you. Like, he thinks you are like a home run of like just a person. I'm like, baby, come on, man. Like, but I'm like, she's like, literally, she's like, I was like tearing up with him talking to you. And it's like, I've had heart-to-hearts. Like, he's made me tear up just because he is just the best freaking guy ever. Like, because he cares. And so he would always tell me, like, with my employees, he's like, Jake, if you want to be successful, because he's ran big, like, outdoor stores. He's just been in the business. He's like, find people and treat them like you want to be treated. But he's like, literally treat them how you want to be treated. And I'm like, okay, like, how does that, translate? So, I've kind of took that to heart, and I think I've been able to be successful in a lot, especially in my business, because like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of the paper pusher in the back. Like, hey, I'm doing a purchase order back here, signing a check for a consigned gun. I don't have the glamour job, like all my buddies think. It's like, dude, he's out there playing with guns, and it's like, I'm like, no.
Playing with paperwork.
Yeah, I'm the paperwork guy. Like, yeah, I might get to see some of the guns first, but it's not like I'm like out there shooting like bang bang,
Yeah.
Like, and you do get invited to cool stuff that, I mean, it is pretty cool. Like,
I'm not gonna
dude,
lie,
it's cool. Like, you have guns, and it's like, I'm a gun guy. Like, I've always been pro gun, but I haven't been the guy. I thought literally when I came into that, I was like, hunters, because that's my world,
right,
man. That's my game. Like, I love to hunt. And I'm like, that's what runs this. Like, we're going to plaster this store with like the baddest ass selection of hunting rifles, right? I get in there and I'm like, buddy, I'd be broke.
Yeah.
Because the way that the hunters work, it's like, right, you have like the family heirloom gun. Hey, my dad shot the deer with the 30-30 here. It's like, oh, cool, and so you if you did all that, like, legit, you'd be broke. Yeah. Like, if you cater to the hunters, everybody out there that wants to do a gun store, you'll be broke if you do that.
Yeah.
Cater to the shooters.
All right, guys, we want to give back to you for having input on the podcast. So what we're going to do is on Instagram, if you share our podcast in your stories, tag the Derick Leg podcast, and Mallory and I are going to do 2 different drawings. One person will receive a Southern Utah Safe and Vault mug. It's a Big Frig 32-ounce mug. The second winner will receive a $30 Dixie Gun and Fish gift card. So make sure you share us on your stories on Instagram and tag or do the little @ the Derick Leg podcast.
More of like the world that you were in.
Yeah.
Of like, the holsters, like stuff like that. Like, you're coming in with these fancy holsters. I'm like, Derick, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. Like, you strap that to your leg, how?
You're right.
And so you hit that button, this thing comes out. You're like,
right.
Yeah, dude.
What the people buy competition holsters? Yeah. Oh, like, yeah, dude, it's a whole world out there.
Yeah, they do that? Like, how many rounds are you shooting a weekend?
Yeah.
Like, before COVID, right?
Before this.
Guys would come in, and I would...
400 or 500 rounds.
Oh, yeah. You'd have guys that would buy a case every weekend. I'm like, you shoot all those? Oh, yeah, man. I shoot all of these. All right.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not cheap.
No. Like, it's like I tell people, I have a customer that comes in all the time. Awesome guy. He's retired, like, I think he was sheriff department up in northern Utah. And he comes in and I'm like, dude, Bruce, why do you buy all these guns every freaking week? You turn these over, you do things like, it's my golf game. I'm like, you don't like to do anything else? He's like, no, I do guns. Like, I shoot every day. I go to Rowdy's and shoot. I do this. Like, that's what he does. He's like, that's my golf game. Like, that's what I do for fun. Some guys, they play golf.
Right.
I shoot guns. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
You're like, yeah, dude, we'll hit that up in 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to see, like, guys like that, because there's this whole other world I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
I'd heard of it, but I knew nothing about it. Right. I mean, and that was your game of where you were at, where guys are like, dude, I need this competition holster. I need this belt. I need this many mag pouches. And I'm like,
green and purple and white. And I want to print my own image on there.
Yeah,
and,
I'm like, what do you need all that for, And it's like Derick comes in there and he's like, yeah, no, you need some of these, mag pouches, you want some FDE. The hell is FDE? Like, I legit, like, that's about how much, like, I'm like, I don't even know what these guys are. You mean tan?
You're like, does it help you shoot?
Yeah, like, what's a mag pouch?
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, okay. I don't even know. I'm like, guys use this?
Right.
You're like, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, where Brian helped out quite a bit, too, coming into that, as Brian is from that competition world.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, military background and in the competition life.
Yeah, it's something was way foreign to me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can tell you, hey, you want to go take down the bear up in Alaska? That's what you need.
I'll take care of you.
That's really nice. You can use that. Me, you come in there, competition guys are talking to me, and I'm like,
like,
I can fake it till I make it pretty good, like with the best of them. But some of that stuff just gets like way over my head.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I can converse with just about anybody. There's not anybody that can really like light me up as far as like knowledge, but I've always been the guy. I think when I came in there, I would always tell people, you're more than welcome to give your opinion, but don't give them an opinion that is almost like derogatory of like even the way I thought. Like, hey, 30-06 is the best caliber ever.
Yeah.
Well, you
shoot a 308.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Good on you. If you want to come into the store and you want a 308, 30-06, buddy, we'll send you right out the door with one.
We got
whatever
a
you
couple.
want. Yeah, we got a couple. We can get you whatever you need. We'll set you up. But like, don't give your opinion as far as, this is the only good thing, this is all you can have.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Right. You tell your guys that all the time, and I think that's changed the culture over there for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Couple things I want to touch on with you because I know your background pretty well. When you went from Cisco to doing the pull stuff, right? What made you think, like, when you have that risk in front of you? I mean, it was definitely risky, right?
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
You were taking a huge pay cut to go down and kind of bet on yourself, right?
Yep.
How did you, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is people overvalue their current situations. Like, you had a risk in front of you. What was your mindset to get through that, to bet on yourself and not overvalue your current situation? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, when security, right? There's a security blanket when you work for, that Cisco is the biggest food company really in the world.
Yeah.
They own everything. If they want to buy you, they'll buy you out. They're just big time, right?
Right.
That company was, so when I got hired on, they hadn't hired a guy in, it was like almost 10 years.
Wow.
And they hired me and two other guys. A couple guys were retiring because this is a job that, like, you love it, you stay in it. And, like, legit, when I got there, I was like, I pretty much just worked for myself. Yeah. Like, out of high school, everything, I was always just working for myself. And I was like, man, this is kind of weird. You're going to have a job it's not a 9 to 5. It's, you see your customers, but I love the job. I get in there, I'm like, man, this is phenomenal. The company's awesome, benefits, everything, stuff that I'd never had. I'm there and things are going well to where they totally shift gears of what they see their vision of this company. It's the corporate world, right? You want to talk about paper pushers, you want to talk about guys, they're hiring big time number guys that this, and I can kind of see, I was like, man, I don't know, this is going to be a little crazy, but I'm the most secure I've ever been, right?
And
like,
you've got all 3 kids?
All 3 kids, yep.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 kids, and I'm going, dude, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
that's hard.
I went from, like, the first 2 years, I'm like, my wife was like, man, you're, like, always smiling ear to ear. I'm like, I love my job. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even like work. Like, and I could still do some of these side things I was doing, little side hustles. And I'm like, man, I love this. I love the customers. I love the people that I get to interact with. Everybody at the OpCo is phenomenal. Like, it's just like, it's like a party, right? I'm like, man, this place is awesome. I love it. I had one of my best friends. He was almost there for like almost pushing 20 years. And I'm like, man, he's been here. He's like, oh, dude, this place is awesome. And so I'm going, man, this is awesome. I'm gonna be here till whenever, right?
You're in a tax bracket you've never been in before.
Yeah, everything's going good, right? It's like, man, this is awesome. They shift gears. We're going to change the pay structure. You got to do this. They're micromanaging you now, which was on something that was like, if I wanted to do something, I'd call my district manager. And it's like, hey, Ray, I'm gonna head out. I'm going to a football game. My buddy's brother's playing wherever. Yeah, cool. Whatever. Just cover your stuff.
Call your accounts.
Yeah, how does it get better than that, right? To where then it was like they are just on top of you, to where I was like, this is miserable.
Yeah.
I'm the guy, I don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah, I'm not a good employee because of that.
Yeah, that's, we've talked about this a lot of times. It's like, I just don't like to be told what to do.
My problem is I know a better way to do it.
Yeah, and it's like, why aren't you the damn boss? So it's like, I don't know. So I go to where I just go to my wife, and I'm like, she was kind of like on the fence, like, you got to do something that makes you happy, and my wife, she's been with me, through all the ups and downs. I mean, a little backstory on me is like, I got married right out of high school. I had my first kid 2 months basically out of high school. I'm young. I'm an 18-year-old.
Right.
I don't know heads or tails, really. I thought I did. Little did I know.
We all did.
Yeah, right. And so she was always the type. She came from her dad, always had a really good job. And so everything's stable. Mm-hmm. Where I come from, the other side of mine, my dad always worked for himself. He had a really successful business, had to transition because of different things that he had physically. My dad was a glazer for like 30 years. He had his own glass business for almost 20, sold out of it, got into the hospitality business, so hotel business, built his own hotel, everything very successful. So for me, it was easy to always be like, oh, that's what you do. My dad always told me, hey, go learn something, go do it. Watch how other people do it, go do it.
Yeah.
Learn a trade. So I always had that. So my wife was always like, I don't know about this guy. He might be, kind of crazy, which I probably am a little bit. And but she was like, man, you gotta leave, or you gotta just shut up. Get on board, get in line. And so I just made the decision. I'm like, man, I'm going to jump. I'm going to bounce. I know this is all I know. Most stable income job, everything I've had. And I'm like, well, my buddy, the one I told you, Mike, the one that he was at Cisco. He was actually one of the ones that got me on. And he was the head of the drivers down here in southern Utah. And he was there, and then he downshifted he went from driver to sales.
Okay.
The world that I'm in. He moves to Las Vegas, and he just blows it out of the water. Well, he starts kicking butt. He's just kicking butt. And I'm like, dude, how much you making? Like $50 more than you a week. I'm all, what? You're pushing that kind of numbers a week, and you're making like $50, $100 more. He's like, yeah, it sucks. So then he's like, one day he's like, man, I'm gonna start a pool company. I'm like you're gonna build them? No, my uncle, he does maintenance on them. So he does weekly maintenance. He cleans them, fixes, minimal fixes, little things. He's like, I'm going to go down and trade with him. I'm going to take my time off, go down there for a week. I'm like, oh, cool, man. So he goes down there, and the whole time I'm like, yeah, cool, pools, right?
Pool guy.
Yeah, pool guy. Sweet, He goes down there, and he's like, yeah, dude, I'm going to just slowly start working on this, and then I'm going to eventually quit. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, he does it really fast because he's a go-getter. He doesn't... Yeah. If he says he's going to do something, this dude is on it. He just knows how to do it. He has a game plan. He executes. He does all the business things that you're supposed to do. That's this guy.
Yeah.
He's that guy. And he's very successful every time he does anything. It's like he touches it, turns to gold. So he starts doing it, and he's like, dude, just come down here. I'll teach you. Take care of my wing. We'll do them. So I start doing it. I was like, oh, man, this is easy. Pull the plug, right? So we start doing this, and in the meantime, while I'm building up my business, I started doing Dixie Gun and Fish. I started doing the stuff up here, and then I was actually painting with Troy a little bit just to be in between I've always been the guy, I'm never scared to – I feel like that's one good thing that my dad taught me, is like never be scared to like, don't be the guy that's holding up the shovel. Like finish that project, go ask, hey, what do I do next? Don't stand around. And so I always had the good work ethic, but just I feel like I've done a lot of businesses, and they all like would work in a way. I know that sounds funny, right?
Well, it's because there's one common denominator behind that is you.
Yeah.
I mean, really though, like we've talked before that I've always told people, why does this business work, or why do you work so hard, or why do you do this? And I'm like, dude, if there's $10 left in the world, I'm gonna make 8 of them.
Yep.
One of our first conversations, we kind of went through that. I remember.
Yeah.
And you were like, dude, we need to do something
Let's
together.
do it. If you can work like that, dude, you're on my radar pretty heavy, man. Like I can just respect that, and it's easy to get on board with people like that.
Yeah. But all your businesses are successful. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah. All of them, in a way is what I would say. Like, I don't know if like they went ultra successful. You talk about guys that have been business like Andy Frisella, right? We really, if you're a business guy, almost everybody's heard of Andy, the way that he mentors and coaches people.
And if you haven't, you should.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a plug for Andy right there. Feature us, Andy.
Yeah. And and so if what he tells you and things like that, how, just get your butt in gear, really.
Yeah.
Like, quit messing around. Like, especially if you've got the game plan, the roadmap, like freaking do it. Yeah. And so there's a lot of that, but I think the older and more mature you get, especially in business, as you've either had, failures in a way, they all they tie you in together, mold you to what you are, or prep you. I've always thought there's things happen for a reason, literally. Like, I'm a big believer of it. Like, why does that, or why was I put in this position? Why did I do this job? Why did I come up with that idea to do different things? And it's because there's a lot of that it all ties together, and especially in business. But I was freaked out, but I just was like, man, I'm just going to bet on myself, man. I'm going to do this, make the leap. And then it was like, okay, well, I can see, okay, this, to get A to B, I need X amount of accounts. I need what? So it was, it's easy for me to get in there and just hustle, I think. I got a family to feed. Right. And they're used to a lifestyle that the secure job provided, right? Like, hey, Dad, I need cleats. Hey, I need basketball shoes. Hey, I need this. It's like, okay, yeah, you can't just stop that, or, hey, you're eating this. They still want to eat that. They don't want to go back,
You're
backwards.
like, Jaden, I'm cleaning pools now, man. We got to get you some New Balance.
You got to hit up the New Balance, man. And so I think that it's always scary, but it's kind of like my buddy Mike would say. He's like, dude, just bet on yourself, man. You know what you need. Like, that number. That should be your expectation. And then when you get there, what are you doing to make that better? How are you going to progress in the business world of like things that to take the next step and just evolve? And that's what's always been, I think it's been good with people that I've had around me, that circle that you talk about, right? Yep. It's funny, the more successful or like business things, you're more drawn to those people. It goes back to what I said. You seek out stuff that validates what you think.
Yeah. Well, and I've always told people, I mean, I get calls a lot from kids I went to high school with, or people that I've been affiliated with holsters or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing holsters for 7 years. And so I've had a lot of customers that now have become friends in those 7 years. People always ask me, like, this is what I want to do. I have this dream, but I don't know how to start it. I don't know how to, or I'm scared to start it, or I don't have the money, or I don't, whatever it is. And I've always told them, like, the only time to take the risk and the best time to take the risk is right now. Mm-hmm. Because in 6 months from now, you could have been 6 months ahead, But it's funny, too, is like right now is probably the best time to take a risk, literally. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, Jake quits Dixie Gun and Fish, and he goes off on and makes dog treats out of sheds, right?
Absolutely.
And you do that for 6 months, and then it flakes. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? You can go get a job at Arby's for $14 an hour. Yeah,
wild
and it's
times.
Like, so it's like if you're on the edge of that, and you did it and you're doing it. I mean, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the edge of that right now is not I mean, at least in the 32 years I've been alive, I've never seen a time that is a better setup for you to take that risk.
Right.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, bet on yourself.
Bet on
100%.
yourself.
Bet on yourself. Guess what? It's going to be scary.
You're gonna have to work
I'm scared.
harder.
I'm scared every day, man. Like, I'm used to like, okay, like my wife is very frugal, and she's taught me a lot of things because, yeah, when I first got off when I got on this crazy train that I have now, I didn't have much. I mean, I had a couple $1,000 in my pocket. I had, but that's nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, I was working mechanical insulation. Like, I mean, I was doing things, but I was chasing. I feel like there's a lot of people, they chase a dollar as far as like an amount. Like, oh man, if I could do this, it's this much an hour. It's this, like, instead of, and I did that a long time.
Sure.
I still did. Like, I was just like, but if you want to be passionate about something, you got to love what you do. You have to. Like, I mean, you have to eat, sleep, breathe it. You have to be 100% on board. It's just hard to be successful. You could be mildly successful. You could, I know people that buy businesses like, hey, I bought this floral shop, right? And it's like, oh, hey, it brings in a good revenue. They do things. But you talk to them, it's like they're already clear off over here. Like, oh, man, I got to do this next. And It's like, okay, that's awesome. But how do you grow that business? How do you make it ultra successful? How do you blow it up from what it was? And I'm very competitive.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels. I've coached a lot of years. I don't like to lose. I can't relate that way. My brain doesn't let me. I feel like if I'm going to do something, I really want to do it the best that I can. And so it's almost an addiction, I would say, right? Because everybody's got some kind of addiction, but mine was like, when I got out of high school, it was like, man, I'm doing this, and I loved hunting. I was like, man, I'm going to be the best hunter. Yeah. And I was successful in a way that it was pretty consistent on what I did, the animals, the things, the trophy. It was, I really, really, I loved it.
It drove you.
Yeah. Like it was just like, I like this, but I like being the best. Mm-hmm. Like, I like guys that come in, they talk about you like, oh, hey, Jake, he knows where all the big bucks are, the big bulls. And so you kind of work, it drives you a little bit, right? And so my oldest, Jaden, I wanted him to play sports. I love sports.
Right.
Like, I
was going to say, when you're talking competitive, I mean, you've got a pretty good streak in football going.
Yeah. So it's like I'm super competitive in that way that I was like, okay, right? I'm going to give up what I love. I feel like I'm pretty good at hunting because I'm going to coach Little League football. I'm like, okay, cool. So I start doing that. Well, it becomes an addiction that way of like, hey, man, I'm going to be the best at this. Like, we're going to beat you. I don't care if it's third grade football. I don't care if it's fourth grade, whatever. I'm going to be the best.
Right.
But along the way, I think there's learning things, but I think there's things you can learn from sports that you can't get anywhere else.
I agree.
And I'm lucky enough, I've had awesome coaches, or I've known awesome guys that have coached that really, really made an impact on me on just different things. Or I really like to watch, interviews with coaches, or like the podcasts I'm really driven to. I like to hear these guys that they come in, they sit down with these coaches, and they ask them the hard questions, how they recruit, everything. And I'm just like, man, I just love the whole thing, and I love interacting with the boys, the kids that you get, and I love seeing the success. Like, because I feel pretty good about a lot of these kids that I've coached, and especially ones that I got to spend more than like a season with. They're successful, man. Like, these kids, it seems like they're driven. They've got great personality. There's things that I just barely went on a senior trip with my boy. My oldest boy just graduated high school. And I look at all these kids, and I'm like, there's really not one of them that I'm like, you're going to be a bum. Yeah. Right? Like, right. I'm like, dude, these kids are like, they look good. They're confident. They do things. And I'm like, man, why is that? Like, for whatever, I like to think that, hey, maybe I had a small grain of salt in that.
I think it's that foundation. I think you put a foundation under them.
Oh, absolutely. And just, to be the best.
Yeah.
Like, just don't, one of my favorite sayings is people don't pay for average. They really don't. I'm not drawn to go to, like if I pull you up on Google, right, or Yelp, hey, do you want to go to the most average hamburger in town? No. We like to eat. Like, it's like, dude, I want that thing that's like got the pizzazz. It's crazy. Like, dude, you're building this donut burger. It's like, yeah, dude, I'm in.
Give
like,
me two.
Yeah. Let's try them all, the flavors. You got bacon on that? Yeah, I like that. Like, you don't seek out average.
Right.
You don't. And so it's always fueled me that way of like, especially like in business, I'm like, man, why be average? I don't want to be the average gun store, but I'm okay with the average guy coming in, but I don't want to give him an average experience.
Right.
I tell my guys, when that guy comes through the door, I don't give a crap if you got 6 guys deep. Go, hey man, thanks for coming in. We'll be with you in just a second. You acknowledge them the second they get in there. And do we fall short sometimes? Absolutely. Everybody does. But most people come in there, and those are the kind of compliments. They're like, dude, your staff is just awesome.
Tentative.
Yeah, you've got good people, and I get it every day. I mean, people are like, man, these guys are awesome, like, and they're knowledgeable, and they're everything. And I think especially like in that, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with, whether that's coaching or in business. I mean, the reason I was so successful in the gun store is I started hiring guys that, like, they knew more than me. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. I don't like to be the guy in the room that doesn't know anything.
Yeah. But it's hard to grow when you don't do that.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to be. It's almost good to be a little bit intimidated by them because you have a little bit of respect for what they do, or they bring validity to what you say or what they say.
Yeah.
And they teach you things, and I've really tried to find that, and it's brought me a lot of good people, especially same thing in the coaching world. It was like, man, reach out to this guy, go talk to this guy. Don't stand in one place, figure out how to progress. And that's one thing, like with coaching and just in business, you have to want to progress. You can't just stand still. You have to elevate what you're doing. Or, really, yeah, you can just do it. But like I said, you're going to get the average experience, right?
Yeah. Well, and even if you want to talk holsters, I was doing it with Harbor Freight tools in my basement day one, right? And me and Justin, because Justin and I started that, and we're doing it on the weekends. We had one person order a holster every 2 weeks, and that's how we kind of started. And then you take that all the way to what it is now. And I think it's because of that, pushing that business, pushing that growth, gaining the knowledge. But even doing that, when we kind of teamed up with everything we've been doing, and I've been spending a lot more time with you, I've felt that.
Yeah.
Like I felt like, you and Tyne's track record and your track record. I like a lot of my friends in 5 years ago. I know one's gonna text me and say, "Dude, I'm bigger than you," but like I can't, I was running a business, and not a lot of other kids my age were that I went to high school with.
Yeah.
And then seeing you and Tyne and stepping into your guys' circle, I definitely had that to where you're probably like that more than anybody I've been around, where I've felt a little intimidated because I never felt
that's a good
that.
thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And then I realized shortly after that, I need to spend more time and be around you guys more.
Yeah.
And I'd say in those first couple months, we were together.
Dude, every day.
Almost every day.
Every day. We're talking on the phone a lot.
Yeah.
Like, hey, dude, I got this, I'm painting this store. We're going to go with these colors. It's like, yeah, dude, do whatever. I trust you.
Well, and I think that little bit of humility, and it's hard to have that if you're starting something new, if you're around other people, instead of being, your Mark Cuban smartest guy in the room.
Right.
I feel like, and people say it, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. And it took me till I was 26, 27 to realize that. Like, because it's nice being the smartest guy in the room.
Absolutely.
It feels good.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone's asking you questions and everyone's pointing towards you.
You're the dude.
Yeah, you're the guy. And then it goes from that to now I'm just sitting in the back seat shutting up, you know, listening to you guys, and maybe I throw a question in every now and then.
Yeah. You know, but I do the same thing. I mean, I go to, you know, if it's a conference or something, and you're like, man, why is this guy, you know, or what, you know, and you got to ask those questions. You got to see, like, you know, it's funny the point of view that you see now versus like when you're young, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, chugging along, everything's great. I like being around these guys to where it's like, okay, now I'm kind of comfortable. How do I get uncomfortable, right? Like you to progress in anything, you got to have uncomfortable experiences, uncomfortable conversations. Like me and my wife talk about this. Like I've had a lot of people, like they're sometimes like, man, you kind of rock the boat. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Like I will. I'll ask the tough questions. I'll have the kind of crappy conversation with people like, hey, this is not going to be comfortable. And I learned a lot of that through coaching. Like you get the parent, you know, and with the first year hey, why isn't Johnny playing? You know, well, Johnny is really good, but you know, he's this and this. And so you kind of beat around the bush until, you know, you start going, it's like, you're going to tell me Johnny's the best? Well, come out.
Yeah.
Physically, I want you the parent, right? Hey, why isn't he playing? Come out to practice. Don't show up right at. Come here, see it with your own eyes.
Right.
Seeing is believing, right? And then sometimes, still, no matter what, Johnny's the best. Right? And that's okay, too. I love you, Mom and Dad. My parents weren't that way.
Yeah.
They, you know, you did something wrong, they were like, you know, and you start complaining, well, what did you do? Right? Instead, now, I feel like the way the world is right now, it's not that way anymore.
For sure.
You're legit, you know, what did they do? What did you do to little Johnny? Or like, I just feel like if you have that hard conversation, or, you know, hey, I need to talk to you, you know, hey, Johnny's not going to make it through.
Yeah.
Because this isn't Johnny's game. I still remember my good buddy that I coach with all the time, Gavin. He calls me and he's like, hey, dude, I just got off the phone with this parent. I'm like, which one? Oh, blah, 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 Johnny's mom. And I'm like, oh, geez.
This Johnny causes you a lot of grief.
Johnny does cause me a lot of grief. I just always call him Johnny, right? And he's like, dude, you won't even believe this conversation she's telling me. And I'm like, man, I'm glad you kind of deflected the bullet a little bit here. And he's like, dude, she's telling me, like, Johnny's allergic to grass. He's allergic to, you know, he has asthma. He doesn't like the physical contact. And I'm like, I'll be damned, and let's play football, right? Yeah. You know, so I'm like, okay, let's play football, you know.
Chess
but
club's looking.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, and there's nothing wrong with that. The world needs chess club. They need football players too, but they need some of these. It's like, I got it. And it's like, hey, look, I know Johnny says he's got asthma, everything. Listen, this is probably not his sport.
Yeah.
I'm just going to hit you, you know, right between the eyes. This is not, and that was one thing he kind of taught me too, is like, dude, don't blow him smoke. Just tell her, like,
yeah, give her the information.
Yeah. Bobby and Johnny, this isn't their sport. Like, you probably don't want to play this.
Yeah.
You know, but you need that in business too. Like, you need guys. So we'll go back to Troy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm downstairs in the basement, right? And I come in there, like, you didn't even know we sold safes.
Right.
I mean, you remember, like, you got back over on the wall and you're like, there's like 5 or 6 safes, like tops.
Right.
Usually it's about 4. And like, I come in there and I'm like, man, what makes margin? You know, and there's great things now called point of sale systems that are really awesome, because you can actually see what your cost is and what your margin. Oh, wow. This is an item that makes a lot of money, because in the gun world, post last year, you were like flat or a little below. That's how the whole market is.
Right.
Ammo, anything. It was like, it's a race to the bottom. Like, who can sell it for the cheapest, right?
Yeah.
Like, we'd have guys coming in, hey, these guys like, okay, how do I scramble? Yeah, dude, I'll make those $4.
Right.
Because I need to turn $4 about 15 times so I can make a profit, right?
Exactly.
And so you see all these things, and it's just crazy, because Troy, so I go to Troy and I'm like, hey man, we're thinking of moving up this to scale this up. Man, these are money makers. They can make money on these.
Sure.
You know, but because the reason I thought they can make money, there's not a lot of people doing safes in town. So I'm like, dude, these are something like, there's actually a little bit of margin in it. And I don't think a lot of people are doing it, right?
Well, and nobody's doing champion.
No.
I mean, you guys are protected.
So. We're protected. So I go to him, he's like, dude, you really want to know? He's like, dude, you need to have 12 to 15 safes on your sales floor. Guys that do 10 to 15, I see like an immediate, like it's like a 50% jump. I'm like, really, that much? He's like, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, order me this.
I mean, and you're talking a lot of room in the sales floor and a lot of capital.
Like you get, because they ain't cheap, right?
Yeah.
Like we know that.
A lot of money.
It costs a lot of money. You order 5 or 6 of those, and it's like, yeah, dude, I'm ordering 20.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you sure? Yeah, I'm dead sure, man. We're gonna sell these. We're gonna blow this out. Give me this big dog. These, you know. So we get in there, and we start selling, and I'm selling okay. And then he comes to me and he goes, "Hey, Jake, Champion has done. They spend a lot of money on data, right? All the big companies they find data, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, what we've found is in our study that St. George could really support a factory store like really well. And I'm like, okay, like what does that mean? Like we're looking for a location. We're going to come down there and sell it out of a factory store. And so I'm going, okay, the one brand of safes that I carry now, we can't. I'm going to be competing against
the manufacturer.
Them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, dude, you know, this is kind of crappy. I'm like, well, how do I not get you to do that? I don't know, man. I don't make those decisions, but I'm just letting you know.
Right, heads up.
So I go into that, and I'm like, man, I got to have a sell. I'm going to have a sell, like a truckload. I literally, so we do our first, like, big sell. We sold, in the 2 days that we did it, I think we sold 22 safes. And Troy's like, yeah, dude, I just called up to the president, and he's like, how's that safe sale going down there? And he's like, we sold 11 today. He's like, 11 safes? He's like, well, I always knew, like, this is what we've been talking about.
Right.
Because the next day, he's like, hey, we sold another 11, and we probably special ordered, like, maybe a half dozen more. So, like, maybe in total for the 2 days, we did, like, almost 30 safes, right?
Yeah.
26, 28 safes. And he's like, hey, dude, that's crazy. They're able to do this. He's like, man, if they can produce these kind of numbers, let's kind of monitor this. A couple months goes by, and Troy's like, yeah, hey, they're not interested. It's your baby down there. Because you're moving a volume of them. It's like, we don't need to move into that space.
Yep.
Hire a guy, stock it, all the things. He's like, man, you guys got this.
Yeah, pay for a storefront, pay for all the overhead.
Exactly. And so, and I mean, at the time, you had actually had a little safe store.
Yeah.
Right? And I was kind of like, okay, whatever. But I didn't really care because we weren't really competing as far as like brands. That's always really like in business. I think if you can control brands and different things like that, or the manufacturers are loyal to you, you don't have to compete.
Yeah.
And so you come to me and you're like, yeah, dude, we got this place down on the boulevard. I'm like, and I'm competitive again, right? I'm like, yeah, cool, dude. Cool story, man.
Yeah.
Sling the brownies.
Shut it down.
And I knew Fort Knox, like, dude, if you know safes, like Fort Knox, so I was a little bit like, I was like, that perks my interest, right?
Yeah.
Because even at the time I was like, man, I think I could sell more of these if I bring in another brand. And so I started talking to Troy. Troy's like, hey, I know a guy down at Fort Knox, man. I think you ought to get a Fort Knox because it's the only thing that like will directly compete. So you have apples to apples to show somebody like, because he's like, you can't bring in this safe and this one. They don't freaking work, man.
Yeah.
Like you're not even comparing them. So it's like,
you can't put a Chinese, well, we even did this. You can't put a Chinese safe next to a Champion. They don't
sell.
We couldn't give away the Chinese
No,
ones.
we literally gave one away.
Yeah.
That's what we did. We gave away 2. I gave away one last year as well, like the last one.
Right.
It's like you give them away because they see them and they're like, I don't like those, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to spend the extra $300, $400, get something that like is worth having. I know when my house goes up in flames,
yeah,
baby's going to be standing.
I'm not trusting the Chinese flu people that this is going to still be there.
Yeah, so you do these, but it's crazy how all those things, you know, and so that's how, you know, really you and me, we're doing holsters, and then you've got the safe store. Fast forward, yours kind of, you know, takes kind of a different turn than what you were expecting, to where you're like, okay, you know, hey, I'm going to do something different.
Well, I was like, unless someone can make more hours in the day, like
you just didn't have enough time.
3 other businesses. I don't have time to staff a store with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and we talk about betting on ourselves, right? And when you're the business guy, you like to be in control.
Mm-hmm.
And that there just was, you didn't have the control of a lot of that. Well, you did have the control, but you didn't have the hours.
Right.
You know, and then you and me start talking about it. You know, we talked about it for months,
Mm-hmm.
actually, and we're like, oh, yeah. And then, you know, and then you drop the ball on me. It's like, dude, hey, I'm going to do it. Whether if you want to be in on it, it's like, dude, my head's spinning over here, man. We've got, you know, sales are through the roof. Yeah, let me figure out there again. It's like, how many more hours can I do that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay, hey, we'll do this. I'll run over there. I'll paint the store wall. Then I'll run over to football practice.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, we're all over. And, you know, you're like, yeah, I'll go do the mail route to where you go find, you know, a guy to come in and run things, for, you know, to help run them. And, you know,
Yep.
And for you never had really employees outside of your mail route.
Sure.
You know.
Well, and it was me and one other person for years. Well, it was me for 4 straight years. And then I brought someone else in when I took the second route. And then it was me and him for a year, and I did the safe store. And that's when cause those mail routes have to run 6 days a week.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and so it doesn't make sense to, let's say I have to fill in on a mail route and I go take that mail route over. And then now I've got a store that's closed that I'm paying $2,000 a month in overhead for.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't make sense. And that's when we shut it down. And then I had hired, I had 3 people working for me on the mail routes when I started that other store. And
Yeah.
dude, and you know this, I mean, I've told you this, but having Champion and the relationship with you and the relationship with Troy is the only reason that store's still open.
Yeah.
The safe store now.
I mean, we wouldn't have any. I mean, when we first opened, what did we have on there? Like 35, 40 safes.
Yeah.
And then you're like calling me like, hey, we sold this, we sold this, we sold this. You know, and Tyne, who's, you know, me and him are kind of like, we're the partner with you, right? So, and I'm calling him like, dude, he sold this many and this many. Well, are we going to have enough safes? No.
Yeah, we're running out.
Running
out.
Well, can you get more? Yeah, we can get more, you know, at the time. And then it was like, that happened like one time.
Well, and that was Troy. Troy comes in and says, hey, I'm just letting you guys know, the trend is showing there's going to be a run on safes the next 2 months.
Just like I told you.
Yeah, I have, 12 safes available right now. You have to take them, this color and this color and this dial and this lock. Do you want them? And from that day to today, we buy everything that's available to us.
Yeah, you about have to, because there's just not the way that the economy is and things and the prices and
he's pulling stuff off of other people to
big
ours.
dogs, RC Willies and stuff like that. Like when you're to me, I'm still like, sometimes I'm in awe of a little bit of like, I have this little safe store and we do what? How many safes a month?
RC Willie's order.
Yeah, we're taking it's a truckload.
Yeah,
75 safes.
Yeah,
we're gonna give you half that truckload.
I don't know where we're gonna put them, Jake. But
where it's like, dude, just get them here. We're gonna sling them, and then I'm like, right? I always pucker up, like, oh, because I'm that money guy. Like as far as like I'm seeing the bills, all the time, and I'm like, crap, But then I'm always like, oh, we end up making it. Like we're good.
3 months since that. I think we have 4 safes left.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, man.
It's nuts
when you can move that volume of, U.S. made safes that cost a lot more than a Chinese safe.
Yeah, higher dollar, higher quality.
Absolutely.
Dude, I think the other thing that you and I are on the same level on is, it seems like, and people know, anyone that knows me personally knows this, anytime I start to kind of even out my schedule or even out my days, I'll add 2 more things to it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I've got both the mail routes, I've got holsters, I've got the safe store, we've got the podcast. My mom and I are doing a little liquidation resell, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And it's like every minute of the day I'm going from one thing to another, to another, to another. And it was like we'll back up a little bit. We started the safe store. I was building a brand new house. My wife was pregnant. Mm-hmm. We got a puppy. Like
we love those puppies.
But you're the exact same way. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you and I have always bonded on. But how do you feel like you deal with that? And why do you think it drives you that way?
I don't know. There's just some days where it's like, I feel like sometimes like I want to be busy because you almost feel secure sometimes. I think when you're busy, right? Like you don't have to slow down mm-hmm. and do different things. And so like watching podcasts and different things and like listening to other people, I've been able to kind of take little pieces because like I told you, I'm really a music guy. Like I love music. Music's really a cool thing for me. Like I always feel like if you popped on a tune right now, I could tell you where I was the first time I heard it, who I was with, what I was doing, what I was going to do, and then the next night, like there's just songs that'll come on, and it's just like, oh yeah, man, when I was with my buddies and we're doing this, we're back. And even to this day, when I get stressed and like we're talking about like, hey, how do you do so many things? Music. Like I'm a big music guy, and for whatever reason, it just calms me down, and I can think of different things. And so now, like with the iPhones and the Spotify, you can make your own playlists and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I'm into like that. It's like, dude, I have this mood. Like I've been working on a list. Like I like to go to the lake. I'm like, oh, I got this lake mix. And so it's like all the songs that I used to listen to when I go, because there's just so many things. And so like my wife will get on because we have like the same Apple Music or whatever you call it. And she'll get on there. She'll be like, man, that playlist, man, that's awesome. Or like we were on that senior trip with my boy. I'm playing my buddy Troy. He's got this big boom box, like it lights it up, and when you put it on there and we're playing it, and like the other parents are like, oh, dude, this is good. I'm like, oh yeah, you think that's good? Wait till you hear this next. Like, oh man, we got bangers on here, right? Yeah. Like it's just like, and of course the kids are like, change the channel. Yeah. What's this crappy playlist, And it's like, but all the parents and stuff, they're like, oh man, this takes me back. Like, oh dude, when I was in high school, and music has that kind of feel mm-hmm. for me. And I have stuff like I'll send to my buddy Ro all the time, and I'll be like, I'll send him stuff. He'll be like, oh dude, that song, and I like how it takes people to different things. And so I think to deal with stresses, I literally I listen to music, but the podcast now is what I've kind of started to pivot into that. Podcasts are like, books that are audibles or different mm-hmm. things like that you can listen to. But I think just sometimes where you can listen, and I have a problem. Sometimes my wife says like, I'm very opinionated, but I'll give you my opinion. Yeah. Oh, like it's like, yeah, dude, I didn't come to hear your opinion today, but cool. Right.
I love that.
And
dude.
So my wife's always like, man, you're so freaking opinionated on everything you say. Sometimes I just want you to listen. I was like, okay, listen, but I've never had a business where I had like employees. So I get in there and sometimes I'm just like, oh, he's having a rough day. Dude, what's going on? And so I listen. And so I think sometimes it's taking that step back and learning how to do different things. Like I wouldn't say I had great parents. Mm-hmm. Like I'm extremely blessed. My parents were just phenomenal. My mom, second to none. My dad's same way. Just they both are hard workers. They instilled all the good things in me, religion, anything, just being a good person. And so, the golden rule, right? Yeah. Treat others how you want to be treated. They really had a big impact on me of like making sure that how you treat people, how you hold yourself. Like my dad always had this thing. I remember like in the summer, especially when you moved to St. George, right? I wasn't from St. George. I moved here when I was like 12 years old.
Yeah.
Everybody in the summer's like, buzz your head. I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like I want to buzz my head. My dad's like, no, not buzzing your head. I'm like, why do you care?
Yeah.
reason I care is because you shave your head. First off, he's like, honestly, it looks terrible. Like, it's just like,
He's like,
you just look bad. He's like, you're an Erickson, you got big ears, you look bad when you do these things, right? And it's like, okay. So, you kind of, but I was always like, man, why the heck does my dad care? And it's like, it just makes it look like you represent me, how you interact, how you do different things. And at the time, I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever, Dad, But like the same thing, like with my kids and stuff now, it's like, well, you don't understand. Like, you act like a jackwagon, or you do something, you represent. Really, I don't care how you make me look, but your mother. Sure. Like these things that like you got to have like things in your life that make you, I don't know what's the right word, but just like, how you are as a person. And so my dad just really cared, like, hey, don't cut your hair. You look like crap when you do that. It makes it look like I can't take care of you, right? And so I was like, okay, now like fast forward, like my kids are like, oh, hey, I'm going to do this. And it's like, okay, like right, we always want to be different than our parents, right? My dad's too hard A, or my mom, like they care too much, right? And it's like, okay, I'm going to be the parent that I'm going to let you do something, and then after you do it, you're like, that was dumb. Like you reflect on it, right? Like, oh, you're going to put pink in your hair? I don't recommend it. Yeah. But I'm not going to tell you no. Like, you make decisions, and some of that more is like hard on your mother than, me. I used to not be able to let that go. Like, it would just eat at me. Mm-hmm. And now I think you have to start looking at things in the angle of like, okay, I'm good at business, or I do these things, like the things that you're good at. Well, now how do I be a good dad? Yeah. How do I get my kids to respect what I say? How do I, really tie in that family unit? And I'm not the best at it. I mean, I love my kids to death, everything. There are probably times when they're like, man, or like my boys are like, dang, Dad's a good coach, and he talks to him really easy. But like with my own boys, it's like, hey, yeah, you didn't do that good. That's you're hard on them. Sure. For whatever reason.
Yeah, it's a dad thing.
It is a dad thing. And it's not that it's like, man, I love you to death. I don't know how to say it. Like, and so I think progressing in life of those kind of things, like, it's awesome to kick ass in business, kick ass at hunting, whatever you want to do, sports. It's awesome. Are you a good dad? Yeah. Are you someone that your kids want to be around, or are they like, I don't want to be with Dad. I don't want to, or like even with friends, like sometimes I have to take a step back and I'm like, wow, we talk about rabbit holes, you and me all the time. It's like, dude, that was way like maybe too much. I'm emotional and passionate,
passionate. I think you're less emotional and more passionate.
Very passionate. Yeah, I think the passion is definitely like,
you're not you're not like emotional to where it overtakes you. Yeah. It's more passionate for sure.
Yeah. And I'm very passionate about the things that I believe. It's the same thing. Like, one of the reasons I was really drawn to you, like on business, like we'd only been doing the Safe Store a while, and it was like, I had something else going on in life, and you're like, well, what's going on with that? It's like, well, dude, I don't know. I'm just having this, and these guys are saying this and this and that. It's like, well, do we need to go find them? Like, we need to go have a chat? Like, dude, I got your back, man. Like, I was just like, oh, I like that. That's like, I can ride like that. And so, like, I feel like I've been blessed in a way too, where I have like some really good friends. I probably have like 3 or 4 friends, and that have been like my friends since like day one. Yeah. We still talk like weekly. Like, I have a lot of people that are like, dude, you really have like these friends and stuff. Is like, dude, I talk to them, like some of them every day. Yeah. Like we're that tight, where I have a lot of people that I know, and they're like, oh yeah, I talk to them or whatever. It's like, dude, these guys, like they're like my brothers for life. Like, we ride or die, right? You get that, yep. But I'm loyal to a fault. Like, same thing. Like, if you call me, it's like, dude, I'm gonna be there for Derick anytime he needs me, or my other buddy. It's like, dude, these guys they're my guys. Like, right. And so you look at all that, and so it's like you have your friends that are like family, but your family, and it's like, man, how do I tie all this into perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't have family or you don't have some of these things, it's like it's all for naught.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're all seeking something, and, you know, family's just, it's one of those things, like, until I've been further, more mature, it's like, yeah, that really does mean something, that I would rather please my family almost than worry about what the world thinks of me, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that when we were doing the safe store, were you doing football? Were you in football yet when we started that? Or was it a few months in? Mm-hmm. So we're a few months into the safe store, and have felt, you know, the last maybe 9 years, like there's no one out there that works more hours than I do. Whether those are productive hours or not, I don't know.
Right.
But I don't think there's anyone that worked more hours than me. And then, you know, when Amanda was going through school, I mean, we were both doing 16, 18-hour days, and that's not exaggerating.
No.
And I think that holsters grew because of that, because Amanda would be up all night studying, and I would hear her starting to wrap everything up at 2 a.m. So I'd start shutting tools down, and, you know, then I was up at 6 the next day to go do the mail routes. And anyway, I'd see, dude, rabbit holes, right?
Yeah.
And so with, I might have lost my train of thought on that one. What was I saying?
Well, you're just talking about how you and your wife working 16-hour days.
In football.
Yeah, in football.
And so everyone's asking me, dude, how's it going? How's the store going? How are the mail routes going? How's holsters, all this? And then I would get around you, and I would be like, oh, dude, I'm just so busy. And then I would get around you, and you're like, well, dude, I'm at the store right now, and then I had polls on Monday and Tuesday, and then I've got football every day, and I've got this. And
yeah, I got a game on Saturday. My boy's playing Friday night. Yeah, I'm traveling to Morgan, Utah, or whatever it is, and you're like,
I got humbled up real quick about how much time I would spend working.
Yeah, and it's easy, but it's easy to overtake all that stuff, and then I feel like, you know, you reap what you sow, right? So if you want to make sure that you're kicking butt in business, you got to do those things. Yeah. You got to be the 6 a.m. We got to go do deliveries. It's hotter than crap down here right now. You better get out and do a delivery when the sun comes up, when it's 110 outside, right?
Yeah, when it's 98, when it's dark.
Yeah, when it's dark, you're like tapping on your dashboard. You're like, is this 98 outside? Dang, I am sweating already. Yeah. You got to have the AC on at 6 a.m., right?
But how do you feel like because I mean, my brother Adam's really good at it too, but I feel like you're extremely good at balancing all of those, you know, whether it's the stores or the pools or football or your kids' sports, also with being a good dad. And I've been around you and your sons, and there's no doubt about it that they look up to you and that you're a good dad with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you feel like
it's just a balancing act, man.
This is going to be a thing for me, right? Yep. I mean, I've got Will that's a baby.
And that's the thing is you always think that they're like a baby forever, and then it's like the first day comes, it's like, hey, they need a little league coach.
Yeah.
You're like, nah, I'm not coaching.
I'm like, bro, I work like 12-hour days.
I literally used to, like, that's how I just thought. Like, people knew I liked sports and different things like that, but I was like, nah, I'm never coaching. And then my problem is I'll go back to, like, dude, I don't like average.
Yeah.
And I go watch dad over here that, hey, he's great. He might be really good at church and everything else. He's volunteering. Yeah. Like, but I was like, dude, you're doing it all wrong, right? It's like, get out the way, give me that, right? You start in there, and it was like, I'd have all my friends. They'd be like, why are you coaching? Dude, the guy that was coaching them was not good at it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't let my kid have an experience of, not that it would be a lot of guys are like phenomenal people, but I'm like, they're gaining nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that you should always, no matter what, it should be productive. You know what I mean? Like, especially even in that, like, especially if you're wanting them to progress or have that good experience. I was like, man, that's just not productive. Mm-hmm. And so you jump into that, but it really is. You just balance everything. You have to. It's a lot of self-reflection, I would say, and I think you have to be open to criticism. Is a big thing. When people aren't always going to like what you do. They're not going to like how you deliver it. Right? That's what my wife always says. Man, the kids, it's your delivery, and I'm like, what do you mean it's my delivery? So it's like da 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 da.
But you're very straight line.
Yes,
so I can understand.
I'm
that.
black or white. Like it's a bad thing in my brain because it's like you're right or wrong, and it's like, but I never thought there's a gray area. There's a little gray area.
There's a little wiggle room.
Yeah, you got to have it, and so it's one of those things you have to be able to balance these things out, and I think it's just being able to take a step back and balance it, because I just am always the type too. It's like I want to be the best at it, so like I'm dedicated. Like I'm not missing a practice. My kid's not missing a practice. Like these are the things I expect. Like you have to do these things because just to be successful. But I think when you do those things, but I've just had good mentors and things that way, that direct things, directed my life that way to where I feel like, hey, that's the only way to do it. Now there's a lot of other ways to do it, but that's the best way.
Yeah.
Right? My dad would always say there's definitely more than one way to do it, but there's the right way. You want to do that job twice? No. Okay, that's the right way.
Yeah.
And it's good to have those or other people that reassure you on like, hey, that's what I was taught, is to do it the right way. And I always tell that to my boys. It's like, dude, you're just doing this way backwards. There's this way. It's the right way. Mm-hmm. Just do it the right way, right?
I think that a lot of that like you're competitive though comes from you wanting to have your kids to have a good experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had, I don't know how many, hundreds of talks about, I think for you, it all still ties back to the family and back to the kids. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I haven't been around your daughter much, but the two boys, and you can definitely see that. Yeah. And so, I don't know, that's something I've always admired about you, because I've seen you around your boys and I've seen how they react to you. And, if you want to call it, you're being competitive, that's part of it. But I think it's also, you're trying to provide that good experience for the kids and for the boys. Absolutely. And not even just your boys. I mean, how many other kids are out there that all those kids know who you are and they all look up to you? Yeah. I mean, I've got one working for me.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Abe.
Yeah.
And he has nothing but good stuff to say about you because he's been around you and I mean, he hangs out with your boys.
Oh yeah. I always try to do that. I had awesome friends that had awesome parents too. And it's like, hey, you know what? There's some kids, they definitely might not have the same home life as you. And it's like, man, I'm glad that kids feel comfortable to come to my house. Yeah. I might not have the flashiest house, but they feel comfortable to come over there or express something to you or express it to your wife. Like, I like that. I like that they feel like, hey, they can come to me and I can put a little input on, maybe they're having a rough time with their parents or whatever. It's like, oh, hey, I've had some of those talks. I still remember when I was doing high school basketball and I was sitting there and I was texting. It was probably like 11:30, and my wife's like, "Dude, who are you texting?" Right? Because it's 11:30, man. Yeah, and I'm kind of laughing.
She's
and
like, "What's her name?"
Yeah. Who is she?
It's Jake from State Farm, right?
No, it's like, oh, hey, it's so and so that's on the basketball team. Oh, really? And it's like, and she always loved that of like, man, hey, he builds these relationships with these kids, and I still I'll get DMs or. Just every now and then I'll get something funny sent to me or whatever that these kids are, I had a couple kids that reached out to me that they were on church missions. Yeah. LDS church missions. And I had a parent that called me. She's like, hey, he just wants to chat with you. I'm like, hey, yeah, dude, I would love to.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm actually flattered that he wants to talk to me. He wants some advice. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I'm going to shoot him straight, right? Maybe what I tell him might be not the exact same thing as you, but, I just have a lot of respect for that. It's like, man, I'm glad that I made an impact on somebody that they wanted to talk to me.
Sure.
And they're having a tough time. It's like, man.
Yeah.
Pat myself on the back, right?
I think some of that goes back to, we'll tie Troy into this one more time.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything about Troy is relationships. And if I've learned anything about him, he's very personable. And, I mean, he's even taken people that I've been around kind of under his wing, and I mean, he's texting them quotes of the day and inspirational stuff, but you're that way too with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's important. I mean, I had that when I was a kid. I had, I had 2 friends' dads that were huge in my life.
Yep.
And one of my friends, Jeremy Hardman, his mom would always say, like, takes a village, right?
Yeah.
And I needed that village when I was a kid for sure. Growing up with, my teenage years with my dad being the way he was. And I kind of had, like Jimmy Morris, his dad, Shane Morris, kind of took me under his wing. And that was the first time I was really exposed to entrepreneurship. His dad had a bug business, and he would take us out and pay us, and we'd do it. And I would see him calling people back and filing receipts, and I would see all of that back room stuff. Your paper pusher
paper
stuff.
pusher, man.
And then after that, going to Alex Stout and his dad, Ron Stout. And Ron was, he was huge, instrumental in my life.
Yeah.
And so, but you're that guy for who knows how many kids.
Yeah. And I hope, like I said, go on that senior trip and I see these kids and I'm like, man, I'm glad I at least got to interact with him for as long as I did.
Yeah.
Or, even if it was a blink of an eye on some of these kids, just you see so many walks of life, and you see, like I would tell my kids, it's like, you might not think that you have everything, but man, you live better than,
sure.
We got first world problems like you and me talk about. We're like, dang, man, that's really a first world problem, right?
I'm like, oh, dude, this is so hard for me today. And you're like, oh, first world problems.
Yeah, first world problems, right, man? Oh, man.
Sorry your diesel truck didn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. Sorry you didn't have to walk, to work and pull a wagon,
Exactly.
But I love having those. Because I had a lot of them in my life, I feel like that just anybody that had a little bit of sand, in my life, it's like, man, there's just people that you come in contact with and you're just like, man, that guy's undeniable that he's had an impact on me.
Well, give me a funny story about one of the boys. Give me a little dirt on one of them.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. My oldest, I'll just go to him because he just graduated high school, right?
Yeah.
So he's always a funny kid. And so I was going through my phone the other day because I'm trying to like delete some pictures or different things. And I was going through some messages, and there was I have a thing with eggs,
okay.
Right? So I like eggs, but so my father-in-law has chickens, right? And so he has a chicken coop. Well, the eggs that come in, when they come out of a chicken coop, all the people out there, they don't know they're not all white and shiny.
Yeah.
Right? That's not how they show up.
Right.
So I would call them poopy eggs, right?
Okay.
Like, hey, they got poopy eggs. So he's pretty witty, that he's real witty and super confident about himself, right? He wears those short shorts and he likes that, right? We give him a lot of crap.
Abe,
yeah, they love the short shorts, man. So he was going through there, and I get on there, and I was like, man, what the heck is this? Because I see him, and he's got like this stick. I'm like, what is this? So I hit play on it, and he's in the chicken coop, and he's doing a kind of like being like a news anchor.
Okay.
Hey, I'm in here with the chicken eggs here, and we're trying to find the one that knows anything about the poopy egg. And so you got like the chickens over here, like in the coop, and they're making the chicken sounds, and he's like, "Did you lay the poopy egg? Did you, and I'm just laughing, right? It's just a totally funny story.
Oh, man.
And so my wife's like, I'm like, just how witty he is, like he can but he's confident witty, but it's even like that. He was probably like 11, but it's just funny that I come across that.
That's awesome.
But they're funny,
Good old Jaden and the poopy egg.
The poopy egg, man.
All right. Well, anything else you want to throw in there?
I don't know, man. I think we've covered a lot today.
Well, I appreciate you coming, man. I'm sure we'll have you on again. I think that, we've got a billion things we could actually cover.
Always.
So anyway, thanks for coming. We'll wrap this up. Again, the episode is brought to you by, if you want to be cheesy and say that, it's Blue Form Media. So Mallory and Blue Form Media put this whole thing together for us to be able to come in here to the studio, have these conversations. We're a conversation podcast, not necessarily an interview podcast. She produces the whole thing. She does all of it. So if you've ever been interested in any of this stuff, reach out to me, reach out to Jake.
Yeah, that's awesome. First class.
Yeah, Mallory. She asked me what drink I want. She brought me Mountain Dew. So she may even get you your soda of choice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So if you want to do something like this, reach out to us. I think it'll be a cool experience for people. It's completely pressure, judgment, whatever. I'm terrified to do this kind of stuff. So if I can do it, I think anybody can do it.
Yeah, I would say for sure.
And then we're going to try and do this every week. And our next guest, we have Nicole on the books. So Nicole is going to be here next week. It's going to be a cool podcast. A little backstory with her. I went to school with her. She kind of struggled through some mental things through her, when she was younger and through high school, and she attempted to take her own life. I guess it would be last year.
Yeah, last year, kind of spring.
Yeah. And so we're going to have her on. She's going to talk about, she's fairly open about everything, which is cool. So we're going to go over some cool stuff and, where she's at in life now and what she wants to do. She's got some dreams coming up, and she's actually taken some classes at Dixie to try and fulfill those. So next week, tune into. Anyway, this is Jake Erickson, my main man, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Derick.
That's it, dude.
No, it's easy, man. That was easy.
It's fun, huh?